episode, we have my business partner and best friend, Breck Dockstader. This is an incredible episode. We talk about a lot of really challenging things. There's a little bit of emotion. There's a lot of laughs. You're going to want to stay tuned to the end because he drops some serious bombs. But thank you so much for listening. Make sure to listen and subscribe. Thank you and enjoy the episode.
I just want to be Luke Combs. The coffee ends with a one, takes forever to get ready, so she's never on time for anything. Let's give the people what they want.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's give the people what they want. All right, welcome back to another episode of Winning the Moment. I am Cody Aiden, and today on episode 7, I have a special guest, my partner in crime, co-founder of Vibrant Management, Breck Dockstader. Breck, thanks for being here.
Really excited to be here. Been waiting. I don't know how it took 7 episodes, but, 7's down the list.
Well, you have to say you want to do it, and then you have to have time to do it. That's what Breck does. He gets mad at me for things, and then we make a joke out of it. Okay,
Every
so
day.
let's tell the people a little bit about you. Who's Breck?
Breck's a wild child. Grew up literally inside Zion National Park, a little town called Springdale, Utah, with some wild hippie parents.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, we should do a whole episode. Let's just talk about Breck's upbringing. That might need to be like episode 40. And grew up in the hotel business, right at my dad's feet, and it's all I've ever known. And spent a few years in my early 20s trying to do something different, but ultimately always came back to hospitality and tourism, and that's how Cody and I became business partners, which is really cool. Started Vibrant Management together and just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, which is really cool. So, big family guy. I have a beautiful wife, V, a crazy, wild and insane son named Hudson. He's 5.5, and a beautiful stepdaughter, Maddie, who is 11. So, just 37 years old and couldn't be happier with life. It's been a wild journey, hard journey, but I'm really excited to be on it.
What's funny is, for those of you who have read the book, you would know that Breck and I could have been business partners earlier in our lives.
I like not to talk about that.
So let's talk about your dad. What's one of your favorite stories you could share of your dad, or some of the things that he's inspired you that you're fulfilling today?
At the beginning of the podcast, I told Cody not to bring up things that are going to make me cry. So I'll try and talk about him without crying.
You can't tell your story without Dale's story.
Yeah. So my dad died in 2012, so that's why the emotional component. But my dad was a wild dude and an incredible dude. He grew up here in St. George, but didn't really fit the St. George model. His soul was just a free-spirited soul, and he tried to go to at the time, which is now Utah Tech University, but Dixie College back in the day. Didn't fit. Then he started doing some classes up at SUU, but he just kept skipping class and finding himself up in Zion National Park. And this is to just kind of paint a picture. This guy had like long hair. He wore really short, like pink Patagonia shorts.
Yeah, because short shorts are cool again.
Yeah. And I remember him telling me, like in high school, when like he'd show up to my basketball games in like really short Patagonia shorts. And I'd be like, Dad, please stop wearing
You're
those.
embarrassing me.
And he's like, Breck, I promise they will come back. And I thought he was the most insane person ever. He told me side parts and short shorts will come back. And look at us. Our hair is cut to the side.
I put shorts on yesterday, my bird dogs that like go to my knees, and I looked at Megan and I said, do I look weird? I feel like I look weird because now short shorts are in.
Yeah, when we went to that Utah Tech game.
Yeah.
And I was like,
their underwear was longer than their basketball shorts.
I looked at you and I was like, what are they doing? And and sure enough, my dad called it like 20 years ago. And he called the whole thing. And
he was always a visionary.
Yeah, his vision is why we're sitting here today. I mean, that's really the truth.
For sure.
That he had no means to ever build the Cliffrose, and just set out. He's like, how can I do it? I don't have a college education. I have no money. His dad died when he was only 5 years old. So he thought about it, and his plan was, I'll get my real estate license. I don't really want to do real estate, but I just want to do enough deals to be able to find or partner on some land up around Zion to ultimately build a motel.
At that time, was Zion like obviously it wasn't what it is today, but was it a big tourist draw? Was there a bunch of other properties up there? What was it like at that time?
I think there at the time, nothing like we see today, right?
Yeah.
It was still relatively undiscovered. I think there was only maybe 4 or 5 small motels, right?
Okay.
And so when he built the Cliffrose and the way that he built it, it was, a whole new thing. People thought he was crazy. Just kind of like how I keep doing things that people think I'm crazy for.
Right. Yeah.
So
carrying that on.
Carrying that crazy wild spirit.
One of my favorite stories about Dale is that
I feel like I know what story he's about to tell.
is that he would mow the lawn in like his Speedo or whatever, right? And then he put like a mattress out there and would sleep out there, and guests would be like, there's a strange man down in the lawn.
So my parents got divorced and remarried like 3 times when I talked about this crazy upbringing. But so my dad moved into the basement of the motel. So I literally lived in the basement of the motel, and my dad...
It's like a movie.
It is. My dad would literally mow the lawn in a Speedo. And you can imagine like these people that are staying in this really nice hotel by Zion National Park, and they see a man mowing a lawn in a Speedo, and they go to the front desk and they're like, who's and why is there a man mowing the lawn in a Speedo? Well, that's the owner. So
that would never happen now.
No, I don't think so. Not unless it was like a weird resort in Greece or something.
Some kind of special resort.
Yeah.
Another cool thing too about the Cliffrose in your story is and the one that I always love to tell is that your dad replanted your guys' Christmas trees on the grounds, right? So it's 7 acres of these botanical gardens and right there by the pools. I mean, how tall is that tree now?
Yeah. So I remember being a little kid and thinking it was weird that compared to other kids and at their houses, their trees were just cut down, and ours had this big, pot that we had to water at the bottom of it, so it's a living Christmas tree. And I didn't actually like it at the time because I thought we were different.
Yeah.
But of course, again, here's my dad doing something that ended up being really cool. And so now when you walk around the Cliffrose, there are these 60 to 70 foot tall Alderica or Mondale pines, for those of you listening that might check me on that.
Know your trees.
And and it's really cool to see those and know those were in our living room. It's just, and it's amazing. Those will always be there, and to be able to go see them and touch them and feel them is really cool.
Yeah, so Breck and I went to ILTM, which is International Luxury Travel Market in Singapore, that was before the Cliffrose had converted, but we knew it was, and we wanted to get to that luxury market. And when I met with all the travel agents, what I would tell them is that story of the Christmas tree. And it just, blew their minds, no one could believe it. So then after the show was over, I went back and I filmed the videos.
I remember that.
Underneath the trees. I was like, look, here it is. Like, I'm standing underneath the tree. So it's just so cool. There's so much magic that goes there. And really, your love for cars came from your dad too, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. It's been a hard thing for me to balance because so often people associate cars and nice cars or, fancy cars with just ego, right? And so it's taken me a long time to realize how to own that emotionally for me because, I grew up with this hippie dad that also loved sports cars. Yeah. And he loved to drive fast, but he also taught me the appreciation and the value of them. So, from a little kid growing up with a dad with these really spectacular, the Toyota Supra MK4, which was way ahead of its time. Yeah. And we went on these incredible drives all the time. So we had all these memories and times. And my greatest memories with my dad are getting in the car to go chase thunderstorms on Cedar Mountain and, driving up over the Kaibab Plateau. And so we had all that time together in cars. Yeah. And him also just teaching me so much during those drives, not just about cars, the value of life, the value of appreciating them, Yeah. You pull up to a gas station, you don't go park your car sideways. You don't, and take up 2 spots. It's just a car, right? Yeah. You see some kids looking at it, you let those kids get in the car, right? Yeah. And that's just, for me, it created a really, really special place in my heart and also a place of therapy, right? Like if I'm having a hard time, a hard day, get behind the wheel. This, right? If I get into funk, it's like, go drive. Yeah. Go drive 4 hours. Yeah. Because just you in the road and feeling it, it's amazing.
Well, and for you, where your brain is this chaotic masterpiece, right? And so when you're driving it, when you're having this intent powerful drive, you have to be focused. So it's like one of the things that can really rein your focus in. Because if you're driving, like, I'll never forget, we're driving to Springdale, and it was me, you, Greg, and Brian. And Breck was driving. It was like the Cliffrose expedition at the time. And so Breck driving a, pedestrian like SUV or truck or anything that isn't fun and fast is probably the worst driver I know.
It's just very boring,
So you're like not paying attention and you're talking or like going off the road, and Greg is about to have like a panic attack. He's like, Breck, please pull over and just let me drive. And you're like, what happened? But if you are driving like for sport, then you're probably the best driver I know.
And that is probably true. I have no argument with that, because it's just very I probably should have like a Tesla for like daily use.
For everyone's safety.
Yeah. For
not just for yours, but all the pedestrians.
Yeah. Everyone. I think I'm certainly better, I know, when I have my family in the car. But yeah, I need to be better about just regular driving.
So you said something interesting that I want to talk about, because it is this weird thing where it's like you almost feel guilty talking about your cars. And I don't mean you, but I mean like anyone in that space, right? Even for me, it's like, because of you, I'm able to have this amazing dream car, the supercar that is my dream as a child. And I want to be able to talk about it in a way that's like, oh, I'm so happy to have this, but I almost feels like wrong to talk about it. And I don't know why that is. It's like, as I'm trying to build this digital presence, I want to tell that part of the story, but I almost feel guilty sharing it. Even my house or having a pool, all of these things that I am so genuinely happy for and were truly dreams growing up as a kid, because I grew up in Wyoming. So it's like, if someone had a pool, it was like they did it. Like if they had a pool, they made it. They're successful, And so now here I am living this experience, and I feel almost weird talking about it. And why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's for me at least, it feels like we're bragging or we're being egotistical, right?
Yeah.
And so it's trying to balance the delivery of sharing achieving dreams in a way that isn't being cocky or egotistical, and that can be really hard to do. And also doing it in a way, because I don't think that I'm better than anyone else in the world,
Of course,
because
yeah.
I've been really lucky and fortunate and worked really, really hard to get where I am. And in fact, I posted, I got this Ferrari that's been a dream since I was a little kid. And I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I do want to share it, but I don't really know how.
Yeah, like how do you share your genuine excitement without being perceived as like, oh, there's Breck, got another sports car.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
And so
it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that way if you do it right. And so, because I think it's being authentic in the way that you deliver it. And so in fact, I posted that on Instagram. And even then I was like pretty uneasy about it.
Yeah, I posted a bunch for you because I knew that you probably wouldn't. So I just did it.
People will post and tag me, and I'll now I'm getting to the point where I'll like reshare it or whatever, but not as much as maybe I'm still getting comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But I wrote that post, and then I was asking a few people like that are like, I would think like
they'd check you.
Yeah, they'd check you.
Yeah.
In fact, a really great friend of me, she's kind of like a mom, Joan Hammer. I sit on a board with her. And she was just kind of someone that I thought, if she sees this, she will tell me, Breck, you are being like, that was just,
yeah, you're being a prick.
Yeah. She's so sweet. She wouldn't say that, but she would.
Yeah.
but the that would come through. And
yeah.
And she actually checked me in the other way. She said, oh no, Breck, I loved your post. I loved seeing that you thrive in your dreams and those dreams becoming a reality. It's part of our one of our core values at Vibrant, or our slogan, right? Dreams becoming a place where dreams become a reality. And she said she really, really loved it. She loved seeing it. She loved the way that I talked about it, because I was really honest about that it was hard to talk about it.
Yeah.
But that it was different. And I think that that's part that maybe, and we can be the counterbalance to those guys that are out there that go buy a McLaren to just drive it up and down Hollywood Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
We do cars for kids. We get these cars to drive and share them. We don't put them in the garage. Your car's got what, 23,000 miles on it?
Yeah.
Right? Like we drive these things and we share them, and we create really amazing experiences, right? Like Cash, your son, yesterday,
I was just going
right?
to say, share that story.
Yesterday I pulled in the cul-de-sac, and Cash, Cody's son, we're neighbors, comes running out, and he just loves it when I pull up in the Ferrari.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just realized like Cash hadn't been in it yet.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey dude, you want to go for a ride? And you just see, this 6-year-old
lights up.
It's just amazing to see that, right? And I would have done anything. I remember being in Rockville, which is a tiny little town, like 140 people out in the middle of nowhere. You didn't see Ferraris. You see a Corvette like once in a while.
Yeah, I
I'd
probably
freak
didn't
out.
see a Ferrari till my adult life.
Yeah, and had a guy said jump in.
Oh yeah.
I would have freaked out. And that's I just always want to be that guy. In fact, I was over at the gas station the other day and I saw this little kid like grabbing on his dad's shirt.
Yeah.
And I was at the gas pump and they were over by the entrance to the store. And I can just see it happening. So I wave.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, come over,
Yeah.
And they were like, so the mom and the dad and the boy came over and I'm like, get in. And the mom was like shocked. Like, I think she was about to start crying, And she's like, you just made his whole life. He loves Ferraris. He loves them. He talks about Ferraris every day.
That's so cool.
So, this kid was probably, I don't know, about Cash's age, something like that. But that was really, and that's just giving that back. It makes it really special.
Well,
it makes it worth it.
And Cash ran home, jumped in the house after, and he was like, I just went in the Ferrari. And he was like, Dad, pull the Ferrari logo up, and I was getting ready to go for a run. So Megan ended up doing, I don't know what he did exactly, but he ended up drawing you the Ferrari logo and then brought it over to you. And he was just so, excited to give that to you, because he was so appreciative of being able to go on that ride.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was awesome. I will never lose that.
Yeah.
That thing. That was
and then
amazing.
he came home and he told Megan, he said thanks like 3 times, just the biggest smile on his on his face. What's funny though is talking about Ferraris. So we'll tell the story about your first one, because I'm sure that those parents were nervous for that kid to get in your car because you're thinking like, oh no, I don't son, please don't do anything to this car, And so Breck at first had his dream come true. How many years ago was that?
I set a milestone. I actually remember it because
you met with your financial advisor, that was on your
I had
list
to do
of
this
stuff.
thing. So I set these goals out probably when I was about 18. And looking back, it's kind of silly, but they help. But I always wanted a Ferrari by the time I was 25. I was like, yeah, I want to,
Yeah.
And so I got one when I was 28. So I was thinking 2014 was when I got the car. So somewhere around 28 years old. So I go and I got that. That was a Ferrari 360 Spider. It was a beautiful car. I got it at a little used car dealership in Scottsdale. So it wasn't the same experience I just had.
Yeah.
Turns out that there's probably a lesson to be learned there and how I bought that car. 6 months later, we do a fantasy draft down in Las Vegas.
Fantasy football.
Fantasy football. Good point. We should have just
Fantasy
left. We should have just left
fantasy drafts in Vegas. Yeah, you can edit that part out, man. We'll leave it up to the audience to figure out what it was.
So, what's interesting is Cody rode down in a different car. So he, of course, everyone else is going to go back in the same car they rode down, and we're in the valet leaving, and our friend Andrew Spainhauer, who, if it hasn't been on the podcast, surely will.
Yeah,
all his stuff is in the frunk of the Ferrari. His brand new suit, the fantasy football trophy,
like the belt, like the championship.
Oh, the championship belt. That's what we went. And like a brand new watch, and Cody's like, dude, come on, man, let me ride in the Ferrari home. Come on. And Andrew's like, yeah, doesn't want to. Well, and reluctantly agrees to let Cody. So Cody's stuff is safe in a Toyota Camry. Reliable. So Andrew reluctantly gets in the Camry, and off me and Cody go in the Ferrari. We're cruising along. We're about 7 miles outside. There's a Love's gas station just outside of Las Vegas, and we're traveling northbound on I-15. And we're in a big pack of cars, and I'll never forget, there was a semi on the right next to us. The roof is down. That's a key part of the story. The roof is down, and I smell fuel, and I'm like, "Do you smell that?" And Cody goes, "Yeah." And then within seconds, you hear that. The best way to describe it is you pour a bunch of gasoline on a pile of wood right before you're going to light a campfire, and you throw a match in it.
Yeah,
it's just that. Woof.
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh no, I know this. I know this." I know, from time to time you've seen that these exotic cars will light on fire. So I pull over. I felt like we're in the movies. You
feel like it's gonna explode. And you're
right. Like you're gonna die. And so pull the car over, and I'm like, get out, get out, get out. And am I allowed to yell? Because if I need to be quiet. Yeah, so get out, and I get out, and I slam my door, and I run off into the desert. And here comes Cody just running up to me. He's like, dude, what the F? And I'm like, what? He's like, why'd you slam your door on me? I'm like, slam the door on you? What are you talking about? He's like, there's flames coming over my door, and I couldn't figure out how to open your door.
My door is completely engulfed in flames.
Completely engulfed. There's these roll bars of this mesh to have wind, protect wind from coming back in the cabin. That mesh blew out and melted on Cody's hair. Like, to give context of this, like, Cody's got touched by flames. It's amazing.
I've got the pictures, Mal, so I'll send them to you, and we can
we should put them into it, because to give proper context. I mean, literally, we were close. I mean, Cody was close to like really bad burns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really lucky that he didn't. And so, anyways, like, why? I was trying to open your door, and I couldn't figure out how to open your door, and I'm like, dude, there's no roof. Like, why didn't you just jump out? Like, jump out of the car. The car's on fire, and that's why you're trying to get out. And he's like, I didn't want to step on your leather.
I was really concerned about like stepping on the Ferrari leather. I thought you'd be upset. And so I was like paranoid and freaking out, because that's just how, like, in my life, loving cars as a kid, I couldn't fathom stepping on the leather, even though it was like, at that moment, felt like life or death. Actually burned out really slowly. And ultimately, when the tow truck showed up, he looked at it and he was like, well, grabbed a shovel and started like shoveling it on.
I'll never forget. He walked up and he goes, "Oh shit." You should probably bleep that out. I guess I'll grab my shovel. He was so bummed out. The fire truck guys, when they got there,
which took forever.
45 minutes.
Yeah, not a good look on that.
Their first question was, "What color was it?" There's nothing left. And Rio, who was just on the podcast, was smart enough. They came up behind us, and they're like, "There's this huge pile of smoke." And they're like, "What if that's Breck's Ferrari?" And they were just joking.
Yeah.
Sure enough, they show up and they see the Ferrari is bursting in flames, and we were on the opposite side of the smoke,
behind the cloud of smoke.
Yeah,
they
so
couldn't see us.
all of them panic. Think Breck and Cody have just died.
Yeah.
Obviously that was short, because then they drove right past it and saw us on the hillside. But Rio was smart enough. I was shocked, just in a complete state of shock, that he picked up this huge piece of aluminum. I mean, it melted completely down. And that's on his office wall. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll show you guys, Mallory and Blake, Blue Form Media, putting this podcast on for us. Thank you. Shout out to you guys. I'll show you the pictures when we're done. It's unbelievable. It really is. One other thing you talked about, too, was Cars for Kids. And I've never talked about it on the podcast, but I think it's a cool thing to talk about. Do you want to kind of share the story, how you got started in that, and how you can do so much good through this thing that can be considered like vain maybe, but really it's not about that. It's about the love of cars and driving fast and giving back.
Yeah, it's been a really amazing thing to be able to infuse that passionate soul of mine. And it was probably, let's see, this is year 11. I think I've been involved for about 7. This would be my 8th year.
Yeah,
I think.
That's right.
And I had seen this post with all these crazy cars in Utah that I didn't even know like this thing existed. And I reached out and I was like, "What is this?" And they're like, "Oh, we do an annual." And at the time, it was just a single drive.
And you didn't know them at all, right?
No, I did not know. And Anna Lee, who's one of the co-founders, had responded and said, "Sorry, it's all sold out for this year." And I was like, "No, I don't accept."
This is a good lesson for the people listening, that with determination and a desire, you can really do anything.
Yeah, I refused to accept that I was not going to be on the next year. And at the time, I refused to accept not even having a sports car. So I called my friend Al Tiley, he's an incredible, he's kind of like what my dad was, right? Just this hippie who also loves cars.
And was successful in business.
Yeah. And I mean, he drives around with his shoes off, and, but he has this incredible, this 2005 Ford GT. These cars are very rare. If you look them up, most guys don't drive them. Of course, Al does.
Yeah.
It's like his car's got like 30,000 miles on them.
It's a wild monster with all that horsepower and no traction control, right?
Mid-engine, just raw, and so I'm like, I'm going to bring a Ford GT. And they're like, "Okay, that's really cool," because they know the kids will just freak. Right. So the way that it works is, and worked then, was you do day loop, and then you end at the Ronald McDonald House. So the whole point of Cars for Kids is to raise toys and money for the Ronald McDonald House in Salt Lake City. And so we end, and they close the street down next to the Ronald McDonald House.
Such a cool experience.
Yeah. And again, this is probably something that will be hard for me to talk about without getting emotional, but we line the cars up and then all the kids get a token, and then bring all the toys, and the kids come out. They have a token, and they get to pick a toy that day, and they get to sit in the cars and be with the cars. And for these kids, they're some of them are terminally ill. It's a really, really powerful thing. And but it's not just that moment. We created this room inside of the Ronald McDonald House called the Magic Room. So those kids can't share toys, and so it's hard for a company like that to have to try and figure out how they're going to just supply toys for a whole year. Right?
Yeah, it's already expensive enough to house the families.
We stock that house every year for a full year with toys at every single event, and it's grown year after year. And I'll share my most powerful experience. A few years ago, I did it, and me and a buddy, and trying to just make it more fun and lively, especially for the kids. I had a white Corvette at the time, and so and he had a green McLaren. So we did the Talladega Nights theme, and I fully embraced. I got like the Ricky Bobby uniform. I did shaved my sideburns, and just with the whole rally as Ricky Bobby. And I mean, the car, we should also try and get pictures of it.
Yeah, I have that too.
But a few weeks after, I'd still had the wrap. Cougar, Annalee's husband, calls me. He goes, "Hey, is the wrap still on the Corvette?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, I need to be in Salt Lake tomorrow." Cougar's crazy like me. And it wasn't like, "Hey, can you be in Salt Lake tomorrow?" It's like, "You need to be in Salt Lake."
And
tomorrow.
that was probably at 9:00 at night or something.
Yeah, maybe midnight.
Yeah.
Then it was not an option. And I'm trying to get through this without crying. But so I drive to Salt Lake in Ricky Bobby as Ricky Bobby. And this was a partnership with Make-A-Wish Foundation. And it was to take a terminally ill kid out to the racetrack. And so, man, so I pull up to Grand America Hotel in Salt Lake. To the valet is Ricky Bobby. I'm in an outfit,
You're in the costume.
I'm in the costume.
Yeah.
And of course, this morning I showed up a half hour early. I'm just an idiot, and I get up there way early. So I go find a place to sit outside of the main lobby. So I go down this hallway where
you don't want to be a distraction in their
the conference
nice
rooms, and I'm sitting in this side chair just waiting, for this time to go by, and out walks Doc Rivers at the time.
Oh, that was that same time.
Coach of the Clippers. And I remember he looked at me and was like, what are you doing? Why is this?
It was him and Sam Cassell, right?
Yes. Yeah.
At the time he was coaching the Clippers.
Yeah, it was wild. And so then the kid was a little bit nervous. And so his mom got in with me first. So we're trying to drive out to Tooele, and they said, "Okay, let's drive about halfway, get him a little more comfortable, and then he'll probably want to get in the car." So we drive towards Tooele, and I just get to talk to his mom. It's their only child.
Oh.
And he's 9 years old and terminally ill. He's about 6 months to live, and just talking to her and feeling her. And
I couldn't imagine.
It literally is. It's unimaginable, right? And to even function. To see her strength, and then his dad's strength, to inspire, to stick, to show their strength for his final time, right?
Yeah, right.
And to also embrace that, right?
Yeah, make the most of it.
Let's really live. And we get out to the track, and Cougar and Annalee have a custom race suit made for him.
Oh, wow.
And it was just unbelievable. And this helmet and everything, it was just beautiful. And Cougar pulls me to the side and he goes, "Hey," so we were supposed to have a Lamborghini race car there for him to get in. He goes, the Lamborghini's not here." And I go, "Okay, what does that mean?" He's like, "It means you're taking him out on the track." I've never been on this track.
Oh, wow.
Car is not track, the tires aren't ready. I'm like,
yeah.
So I'm like, dude, I am not, what? I cannot do that.
Have you ever been, at that point in life, had you ever driven a car on a track?
Yeah, in down in Vegas.
Oh, because you did that experience.
Yeah, but not. I mean, so we put him in the car, and I pull out, and you have to pull out, and there's other cars on the track. There's an open track, and I start going the wrong direction.
No.
There's helmets, and I have a helmet, and they're turn around, and I almost just ruined the whole thing by
going the wrong way.
So turn around and just going around the track and just seeing this kid just just light
Was he
up.
scared at all?
No, he was just in it, man. He just was thriving. And I stopped and pitted and took his dad out. And that's when I lost my cool.
Yeah.
I was strong for the kid, right?
And did you have Hudson at that time or no?
No.
No. Okay.
And so, well, yeah, I did,
Yeah,
because
you did.
I came
That's
home.
right.
I remember I came home and I hugged him tighter than I've ever hugged him in my life. Yep.
Yeah.
But when I was driving around with his dad, I'm in my race, I have the race helmet on, and I am just sobbing, like it was like everything.
Because you were being strong for the kid too.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And then the dad's sobbing. And we
Yeah.
were just driving around this track. I was probably going 20 miles an hour at that point. And that is, that's that part of Cars for Kids. It lives in my soul.
Yeah.
That experience with that kiddo lives in my soul. And I remember watching the Jazz were part of that. That night he sat courtside and Donovan Mitchell went over and signed some shoes for him and just to be holistically part of that. And now his parents will still come and they'll talk and they'll be a part of the event and they'll talk about how amazing Cars for Kids is and the experiences that we have. And yeah, it's a really special place in my heart and my soul. We're doing our 11th year this year and it's a big, really hard thing. But when it comes down to it, you remember why you do it and why you put on this event. And it's because you're able to share these incredible opportunities and bring some joy and light to kids and their families going through really, really impossible times.
And it's nice because last year we finally got to go back because of COVID. We hadn't been back since 2019, right? Would have been the last time. And so last year we got to go back and do the toy. And I'd never even been to the Magic Room because I didn't get to see it the first time. And so I never got that experience. So to be back was really cool. And that was our 10th year last year. And I think it was $152,000 that we raised for the Ronald McDonald House in addition to all the toys. And so it's just been amazing to watch the journey, because when you started, it was just that one day in Salt Lake.
Yep.
And then now it's, a
5-day event.
Yeah, right. That goes last year we went from Reno all the way down to Napa Valley and ended in Oregon, so it's grown so much, which has been really cool.
Yeah. It's really, it's surreal. It's why, it's the why and what you do. And going back to that, how do you share, your love of cars and these things? Yeah. You do it in a way that ties back to the why, I think.
Yeah, because it really is interesting because there are people who are motivated by that and are interested in that. Like we had a kid at the office yesterday. His name's Jared on the U.S. triathlon team, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
And he is talking with Spencer about a sales position at another company we're creating. And he was like, I love that you guys have cool cars. Like that for him was like, this makes me more excited. And so it's like, it can have this really positive impact, but how do you share that in an effective way? And I think hopefully your story will obviously show people like there's so much more to it, and there's nothing wrong with achieving your dreams and being proud.
You shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed to achieve your dreams, right? That's the American dream. Go fight and work really hard to achieve your dreams. Yeah. And then you go and you work really hard.
And then you don't want to tell anyone.
You feel weird about achieving your dream because the people that are in your work in social media and things like that, you're thinking, oh, are they looking at me like, oh, Breck's, it's just trying to be some hot shot show off, and right. And the reality is, my wife, this is actually really great, right? Like, I pulled up to this party, met her 2 years ago on Cinco de Mayo, and she's like, yeah, it was a real turnoff that you pulled up in this fancy car, and I love that about her, right? And she was like, she was such a great example of that, right? Like a
little bit of apprehension.
Just like sports cars and fancy cars usually and unfortunately do mean quite often prick. Yeah, it just does. Cocky prick. Yeah. I know a lot of guys like that, right? Yeah. So I totally get it, and I love that about her. I love that about her, right? I love that wasn't a draw for her. Yeah. I love that she would have preferred for me to pull up in a Volkswagen bus, right? Because that's it go way back to my parents' early days and hers. That's what they drove. Is,
now that you've been with her for 2 years, now what do you think she thinks?
She knows now. Cars for Kids for her was really special. Yeah. For her to go to see the Magic Room. I think she might love the cars more than I do now. And the driving, right? The therapy of the driving experience for her. It's really been beautiful. Like, you just go drive.
Yeah.
The other day we took 2 cars and went and did the Gunlock Loop and had brunch together, and you just see like this glow in her. But it's really special. Like if I'm telling anyone, like you find someone that like that balances you like that, like, and she's so grounding. I love that. And inspiring. And so it just creates this harmony where if I start floating too high, she pulls me back down, and that it's really beautiful and special.
What's funny is I was working from home on Tuesday, and we're neighbors, as we said, and I knew you were gone because you had the truck, I think, because you're going out.
Cody has cameras all over my house and monitors my every move. I have to like try and sneak in and out.
And I hear a sports car start, and so I just naturally look out, and then it's V taking the C8 out, and I was like, that's great,
Yeah.
And they are just so fun to drive, and I think it's really important to learn that dynamic of how to talk about, like what you said, the American dream, and it's not like we won the lotto. Right. And then we got all this stuff because we won the lottery. It's because we did all this hard work, and you've earned the right to have it. And what's cool about you is I think with your visionary, the visionary part about you is it just forces you to want more for yourself. And then because of that, more for the people around you. Right. Like I would not have that car if it wasn't for you. There's just no way. I would have never done it. I wouldn't have the house I have if it wasn't for. I wouldn't have any of those things, right? And so it's so cool to
Here
have.
goes Cody trying to make me cry again.
Breck said, I said, "What do you want to talk about?" He said, "Just nothing emotional." And I didn't mean. I'm not meaning to. It's just.
That's almost impossible with me. I'm just hyper emotional.
Yeah, but it's like, and you see that with all the people who have had the fortunate experience to be around you and that's why the motto for Vibrant is a place where dreams become reality, because it really does happen when you've got someone who's willing to push you to want more. Because so much of and I talk about it in the book, but what really was holding me back was my own thought system of like, all I really wanted was to be safe, right? Like have a house I could afford, have a car I could afford, and know like no matter what, my wife and my kids are going to have what they need. Not more than what they need, but just what they need, right? That's all that I wanted. And we were reading a book, I don't even remember which one it was, but it talked about like, you've got to want more for yourself. And I was like, man, the thing that's held me back is I just never wanted more. And that was at like the beginning of 2020. And then I finally like opened myself up to the possibility of more. And really my habits, because it was 2020, got progressively worse. And, but I got so much more out of it because I was finally open to that mindset, which you've been such a guidepost on that. I mean, even the story you shared about being 18 and saying you want a Ferrari. And what's kind of unfortunate is you actually said it was silly, because I think we're conditioned to believe like, oh, that's a silly thing to think, but really it's inspirational. That's the word. It's not silly.
Well, and I think, and a really good point for anyone that listens to this is that understands like the motivation it's to achieve dreams, but not, I had this real powerful, like just reality check a couple of years ago. I think it really kind of was when I had my kiddo. And, cause I had these huge, like I wanted to build an empire. And then I realized, well, what is your empire, right? What is your thing?
Yeah.
And it's not what I thought it was, right?
Yeah.
My empire, like we have a beautiful home that I'm so grateful for, but it's not this massive over the top. I mean, it's a beautiful home, right? But it's it's like 3,600 square feet.
Yeah. It's not a mansion.
It's not a mansion. But it's beautiful and it's perfect for our family. And then when you have your kids, you realize, okay, you got to find this balance, right?
Yeah.
And you see all these kids, and I talked to a guy, and I won't say his name just out of privacy, but his family achieved incredible wealth, right? And just unbelievable wealth. And he was a great guidepost for me when we were selling the Cliffrose. And they had sold a big family business. And I said, it's just interesting. He's like, my dad worked all the time.
Yeah.
My mom raised us. We didn't see our dad.
Yeah.
And that changed everything for me when I had my kid. It was like, I want to be there. And I never want to, when Hudson, and it's not, we always say 18, right?
Yeah.
It's not 18.
Yeah.
It's 12. Right?
Yeah.
You're at 12 years old, your kids are no longer
now they want to be with their friends.
They want to be with their friends, right? And so I don't want to look back and think my kid just knew that dad worked all the time. And inevitably, unless there's something big happens, but certain milestones might not be achieved, but what's more valuable than that is that you look back and you know that you absorbed every second you could with your kids, because you don't know what tomorrow looks like, right? You've talked about that.
Yeah.
And so you create what really is for you. I had this incredible experience I love Cozumel, Mexico, because I scuba dive and it's like this really powerful thing for me. But I met this taxi driver, and I speak broken Spanish and he speaks broken English. And before I left, I texted him and I said, "Hey, do you and your wife want to go to dinner with us?" And he just you could see his text just lighting up, because I don't think an American
no
guy's
gringo's ever been like
ever asked a taxi driver in Mexico to go to dinner.
Yeah.
So they show up, and I mean, we're in Mexico on vacation, so we just have like shorts and tank tops,
flip flops.
They show up like totally dressed to the nines, like it was just, they were right. The wife didn't speak one word of English, but you just had this beautiful soul. And through dinner, he said, "Man, in America, everyone's rich and has these dreams and it's big. And I just wish I had that." And I said, "Let's pause for a minute." I was like, do you have a house?" He's like, "Yeah, I have a house. I own a house." I was like, and you have kids?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Are they safe?" So Cozumel is one of the safest places in the world.
Yeah.
And they go to school. Yeah. They go really nice private school type thing,
Yeah.
They have uniforms.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
and I was like, you're living right now a dream that millions of Americans are striving to live,
For sure.
because it's safety for your kids.
Yeah.
You're with your kids every
You're able
day,
to have a
all
home.
these things. And the definition of success isn't all those. So,
You're right.
so the moral of that story is create your own vision, and whatever that is, it's okay. It's not, it doesn't have to be a big house. It can be a trailer up in the mountains that you want to live in. Right?
Yeah, as long as it's what you want.
What burns your soul fire, right?
Well, Alex Ramosi says something like, when you're in your 30s, all you want is wealth. But when you're on your deathbed, all you want is your 30s. You know what I mean? Like that's all. And even I had my dad on the podcast last week, and so he's 66, and obviously he would have answered this question differently at 36. But I said, how do you define success? And he said, the legacy I leave for my family, and it probably takes some time to get to that point where you can have that kind of big thoughts, because I know for me, when I started, it was just money, because I didn't have that as a kid. And so all I wanted was how much money am I going to make,
Right.
and how can I make the most money? And once I make that money, then I'll feel successful. Yeah. But that it's a fleeting feeling. Cause even I remember working on the book and sitting in my house in my beautiful home and sitting there feeling I thought when I had the house and the car and the job, then I would feel successful. But here I am feeling like I have more to do, and it's because you lose track of all the things. Because if I had asked myself 5 years ago when I moved back to St. George and I said, "Hey, in 5 years, this is what you're going to have," I would have said, sign me up. That's the greatest thing in the world. Are you sure I can have that? But once you get there, then it's you're on to the next thing. And so I think it's so important to be present in the moment, because we get too stuck in looking to the future and losing sight of all the amazing things that we have right now.
Yeah, right. Live, just soak up every moment, right? You got to soak up what your experiences are. Last weekend, we took our kids camping, and it was just pause and watch them. Hudson was running. We were finding rocks in this wash, and I looked over, and he had taken his shoes off. And my first thought was,
Put your shoes on.
And I just looked at him, and he was just wait, the Native American kids that were running up the same wash, they certainly didn't have shoes on.
Yeah, right.
Right. And also there's a lot to it, to ground.
Be connected to nature. Yeah, right, for sure.
And he just loved it. But I just pause and soak up those moments, right? Look at your kids, look at your friends and your family, and just live, really soak those things up, because time is so fleeting, right?
It's the only thing we can't get back.
I had my 20-year high school reunion is next year. I just got a message, and I'm like,
oh, that sounds gross.
I was like, that is impossible.
I don't love that at all.
Right. And exactly. It's so fleeting. Right. And it's this concept of time. That's probably a whole other podcast, but it's just live in it, because it goes by so much faster than we think it's going to go by.
Yeah. Even looking at Cash the other day, it's he's this grown little man, and it's what happened? You were a little baby just a few weeks ago, and now you're this kid walking around with ideas and thoughts, and it's just the craziest thing.
Yeah, and people just they think you just by like we all think that we have more time than we do.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy the other day who was again it was a guy who was very successful. He's probably 55, and he's like, I just sold my company, and now all I'm going to do is spend time with my kids. And I'm thinking, man, he's got 20 years on me. And he's like his older kids.
Yeah.
That's too late.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just anybody. If I was to go out and like be able to share a message with the world and had a platform, I would go to every college and university and every kid anywhere, high schools, and just say that whatever you do, if you have kids and family or whatever, not say you have to have kids, but just don't forget that time is super fleeting and balance that.
Well, even I, looking back, because I wanted to be an adult when I was 12 for some reason. I don't know why. And I was like, give me the car insurance and the mortgage and the whole thing. Like, let's do it, And so because of that, I had monetary success really young. And I was in these roles that were like outside of my age bracket. And I was thinking about it the other day. So my wife and I moved to Phoenix when I was like 20 and she was 19. We weren't even married at the time. And I was thinking back, I was like, we didn't do anything fun.
Just work, just grind.
I just worked all the time. Like I lived in this amazing city for 5 years. I went to downtown Scottsdale one time in the 5 years that I lived there, And now I would never not do that. If I lived in Phoenix now, I would have a residency, I would have a booth with my name on it. Like that's where I would be. And there's all these amazing things that the city of Phoenix has to offer. And I think back on it, it's like, well, we would like go to dinner and a movie. Like we could have done that in St. George. Like we did not take advantage of, or even now, like we travel so much more because we're in hospitality. And I was thinking like, man, I didn't even like take it like, because the company paid for me to travel to visit my teams. And there, as much as I hate Tucson, there are some,
Sorry, Tucson.
Sorry, they know. But there are some cool hotels down there. And it's like, I could have taken her with me, but I wasn't focused on like, let's have an experience. I was focused on like, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to grind and I'm going to be successful, like that's really all that I focused on. And it's like, those are 5 years I can never get back. But it's like my experience, I could have still had the same business success while still having fun, but we really didn't do that. I mean, we didn't, we just worked and made money. That was all. We went to work, we made money, we came home, we watched TV and we did it again. And it wasn't even until just recently I thought back to it and realized like, man, what a waste.
Yeah. And I hope, because we've both started to realize this and people around us. So I hope there's this paradigm shift happening like in the universe where people are valuing that more. And maybe COVID really did for how weird and it was.
That's probably true because it stopped people from, like some people couldn't go to work. So it's like, well, what am I going to do?
And it just brought people back, inward. So that kind of a really interesting story to that it's just about having people in your life that check you. And Cody checks me a lot, has to, because I'm wildly out of control when it comes to.
You should tell the story of what is it, the 5 agreements, and what's the thing in the mind called?
Oh yeah,
Matote.
Okay, so write Matote down so I can tell that. But I want to tell this other story.
Okay.
So the other day, we've been working on this crazy project, right? This really, this is talking like the biggest project we would ever do ever, and and we're sitting there, and I've been just like, I had a very short window of time to try and put this thing together.
Yeah.
In fact, that timeline was going to expire on Monday, right before I walked in this podcast room. We finally got an extension, but so the last 30 days have just been totally chaotic and totally against the vision.
Yeah.
That we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
I've been, working really late hours, on the phone till 10 o'clock at night, that's the time that I'm supposed to be connecting with my wife. Right. And so we sat down and she said, hey, I support all of your dreams and all of your visions, right? Like she does. And so she wasn't sitting me down to say, don't do this thing.
Yeah, right.
What she was doing is holding up a mirror and saying, hey, think about, and if you think that you can do that project, with your current system.
Yeah, you can't.
And not go back into the world where you're doing all those things, you're not going to lose time with your kids and your family.
Yeah.
Then you're crazy.
Yeah.
And I got really emotional. I started crying, and I immediately text one of my friends who has a much larger management company than we have.
Yeah.
And said, we need you.
Yeah.
And we're going to need you if we're able to execute this type of level of project, because of that exact thing, right? It is not worth doing that thing if it's going to detract from being with my family.
Yeah.
And having someone in your life that is willing to just help you see that and reflect on that is priceless, right?
Yeah, and your kids would much rather, like, if you said, hey, I can work really hard and we can go on vacation this year, or I can work a little bit less hard, but I'll be home more. They would take being home more every day over being able to, like, go to Disneyland for spring break.
Absolutely.
You know? Like, they would never trade
time.
No.
Hudson, if I'm home, he just, he wants me to be in his world with him, Legos, whatever it is, like, be in that space. So it's really amazing, right? To be able to just know and be able to reflect and see that, be aware of it, just be aware, right?
Even friendships, actually, before we even get to that, because you think about our friends now. So Andrew, we talked about, I just went to lunch with him this week. I hadn't seen him in 6 months.
Yeah.
Because you have life now and you have all these things. And so it's like, you think.
I didn't believe you.
Yeah.
You're like, I haven't seen Andrew this year. And I'm like, no, that's not true.
Right. And you think, like, so even because you were talking, obviously not everyone listening to this podcast is going to have a family, but they will have friends. And it's the same way with them. Like, cherish the times when you don't have all those responsibilities and you can just hang out with your friends, because there will come a time in your life that it's very challenging to find the time to be able to just be friends.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about just being aware in the moment of what it matters to me.
Yeah.
What really matters to me, and don't get lost in. You want to plan for your future, of course.
Yeah.
So you're not 60 years old, and
you just want it to be the future you want, and not the future that society told you to have.
Yeah, right.
Or your parents want you to have, or your spouse wants you to have.
Yeah. So don't live for what society wants you to be. Right. Live for what burns your soul fire. Yeah. Right. And then I guess that kind of ties into anybody that's listening to this podcast. If you have not read the 4 Agreements, go buy it immediately. Don't buy a digital version. It's short and easy to read.
You can read it in like an hour.
Also, the first and last chapters can be just get past that part. Yeah. But the 4 Agreements, read it. It changed my life.
Such a great book.
It changed how I'm able to understand and work. Like, me and Cody are very different when it comes to the way that we operate, especially work wise. And so, like, if you go into my office, it looks like a tornado went through it. Every day, no matter how hard I try. My inbox, we have a goal for my inbox to be at 10. I can't get it below 500. Cody's inbox is literally at 0 every day. It's probably at 0 right now. Somehow, some way during this podcast, Cody has checked his email and made it 0, while mine's just racking. But in that book, it talks about the way that your mind processes information.
Yep.
And they refer to it as the metote. And so I always like to tell people, my mind, it helps people understand, right? It helps Cody deal with my crazy ass, right? Because otherwise he would probably go insane. Like, his office looks like no one works there, right? So he doesn't leave the weekend without it looking immaculate. And so it might be a little dusty though. You could go write your name on his desk, but that sucker is like, there's nothing on the desk. And so anyway, this metote thing, I describe my metote as streets in India. There are buses and cars and scooters and monkeys and elephants all going different directions.
Monkeys are driving the scooters.
Yeah, monkeys are driving the scooters backwards. It's just chaos all the time, right? It's a spaghetti bowl. And I have to remind my wife that too. Like, it's just chaos up there, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me, like, to do simple things, just structure, because it's just not how my brain functions. That's probably partially why I'm not a terrible driver. And what you were saying, like, when you have to drive fast, you have to focus, right?
Yeah, it brings you present.
And I describe Cody's brain as the German Autobahn, right? It is clean, it's precise. I doubt they ever have a traffic jam, and it's just flowing, and that kind of balance is great. So, like, and that kind of thing is important at home too. Like, we got this digital calendar because I forget to tell my wife anything, right?
Of course.
And so now it's like in our house, and I remember I was like, "Oh, babe, shoot, I have the podcast tomorrow," and she's like, "I know, right there.
Yeah, what a great thing for you guys. I think too, for the listeners, it's important. It's funner to do stuff with someone else, for one. So like before I worked with Breck, I worked with one of my best friends, Zach, in Houston, and I couldn't imagine building that marketing company alone. That would have been terrible and devastating. But doing it with people that you enjoy, it just makes everything so much more fun, whether it's your partner at home, it's your partner at work. I think we're always better when you're with other people, and you want to find someone who balances you, right? So like we talked about you being a visionary and pushing for more, and like I'm more conservative, so I would always be like, well, let's just do a little bit less, and you'd be like, no, let's do a lot more. And so it's so important to have that because you want that yin and yang. And so I think if you're young and you're looking to start something, find that person who can really be a good balance. You don't want someone to just like you because you're going to miss out on all those pieces you don't have. And so you want someone where you can gel, but they've got different strengths than you. And I think when you can take people and put them together, you're going to achieve so much more. And it's a hell of a lot more enjoyable.
Hell of a lot more enjoyable. And it's like you said, personal and professional, right? Then there are people that are wildly successful just doing it on their own. But I find it to be, like doing stuff with people and immense joy out of helping other people create what they want, whatever their dream is, right?
Yeah.
If Kyle wants to go live in a yurt and that's his dream, I want to help him find a path to live in that yurt, right?
Right, absolutely.
And same at home, right? Like it's just so great to have this partner that helps me balance that, right?
Yeah.
And at work. And so it's just finding those people in your life that help you stay grounded while progressing. That's the magic sauce. And it's not easy, right? It's hard to do and it's still hard. Like my dad would always say, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. I'm sure that was a quote from back in the day.
Yeah.
But we're all, if once the day you think you've got it all figured out, I mean,
it shows how much you don't know.
Yeah, good for you, because I certainly don't.
That's a good segue. So one question I like to always ask guests is like, do you have a mentor or do you believe in mentorship? Like, what's your thoughts on that? Do you want to share any perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great. In fact, I was talking about this, like I said, I was telling my wife a story about yesterday that I was sitting in this room with Nick Entz. And he's a good example, right? Of someone that's in front of me about 10 years and the way that he's balanced success but also staying close to the dirt, right?
Yeah.
We were sitting together the other day and he's like, look at this text I just got. Dad, I fed the horses, and it was just, seeing that, right? Like seeing, so yeah, I think I don't have a singular mentor in my life, but I think I definitely try to learn and look at people, especially having lost my dad, right?
Yeah.
So there's incredible people that I try and absorb and learn from as much as possible, I think. So yeah, I believe that if your ego is so big that you think that you don't need to learn from other people, that's really sad, because I think we all have so much and we'll always have so much to learn and reflect on. And my dad was a huge mentor for me, both in good and bad ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes it's them showing you what not to do.
A lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that I learned from him in what not to do, right? In marriage and anything. So I think that's also an important part.
Absolutely. Yeah, learning what not to do can be just as valuable. So then the next question for you is what would you say is your biggest win in your life?
My family.
That one's not supposed to be emotional. Okay, so then this is an interesting one. This might also be emotional for you, but what's your biggest loss? Your dad.
My dad.
Yeah. I won't make you go any further on that one.
No, it's okay. That's an interesting thing because, and I think it's important to be out. I want people to know it's okay to be emotional, to be raw and real, right? Like we're so scared of that.
Yeah.
I was sitting at George's the other day talking, and I was crying in public, talking to my business coach, and I'm at a point in my life I don't care if the people across from me see me crying.
Yeah.
And if anything, I want them to, right?
For sure.
People need to know that you can be emotional, right?
Yeah. Well, I think for men's health, right? And like society, like there's like this old stigma of like men have to be tough and men have to be strong and like,
Yeah, I'm tough as shit, but I'll but I'll cry.
You know, but it's a real thing. So I went to this Breathe thing last week in St. George with Michelle and Jamie, and it's all about creating a space for men to be able to be vulnerable and to share things. And it was amazing what these guys shared after. And it's like, so as society, and like especially for us with sons, like you need to create an environment where they know it's okay to be vulnerable and be in touch with your emotions and be willing to share and being willing to express all the emotions in the spectrum: happiness, anger, sadness. Like all of those are real human emotions, and you shouldn't suppress any of them.
And that's a, going back to my dad, and you said, what is my biggest loss? It's definitely my dad, because he was the one that showed me that. He showed me how to cry and be a man, right? Like you're not supposed to do that, right? Like, buckle up,
Right.
I vehemently disagree with that thought process that you can't, being tough doesn't mean you can't be emotional. And what's interesting about it is, yes, it is my biggest loss. But my dad had clinical depression for 30 years, right? Battled. I didn't know him without it.
Yeah.
But I saw him fight for us and fight for that. And so when he checked out, so he committed suicide. For anybody that's wondering like what's going on, I'm pretty open about talking about it. And a lot of people are always like, people will say, "Are you still mad at him?" I was like, am I still mad at him? I was never mad at him.
Yeah.
I miss him.
That's an interesting thing to say.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
That's so odd.
Because like all these people say I'm still, and then they'll be like, oh, because I'm still so mad at him. Because suicide, quite often, people, it can be a very selfish act, right?
Sure.
Especially if you have young kids.
Yeah.
Right? That is a very selfish thing to do.
Yeah.
I believe that.
And the way that you do it too.
Right.
All those things.
Right. Yeah. You hang yourself in a closet.
Yeah.
Something like that's terrible.
Or they
right.
have to find you.
Right. But my dad checked out in a very peaceful way. And he did it at a time when he knew his family was okay. They're safe and they're going to be okay.
Yeah. You guys
But
were all
I
living
fought to the point that I could.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm a proponent of suicide. I am not. I want there to be solutions that people don't get that darkness. I think that even today, there are so many different pathways to not get to that point.
And you shared something about your dad before, about like, you said like, I wish he would have been willing to do this. I can't remember what it was, but you were like, I wish he just would have done these things.
Yeah. I think, Western medicine has a place in all things, right?
Yeah.
But there are other journeys and other pathways that are considered taboo still, that I think are opening up, right? Plant medicine.
Yeah. Even just like the breathing that we did, like
breathing,
using your breath and finding ways to find peace.
There's so many other ways, and sometimes you need both, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe it's a combination of the two, but it seems like what we've created is it's either
Let's
one or
just
the
not have
other.
a pharmaceutical cocktail,
Right? Let's not just rely on that.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you need both.
Some
right?
of that, yeah.
And that's okay. But I believe that if some of these other things that weren't so taboo, at the time, that he might still be around,
Yeah.
So,
okay. So then the next one is, I'm pretty sure that you read Winning the Moment. I know you read some of it.
no, I read it.
So what would you say is your biggest takeaway?
Well, it's interesting with the book is when I was there with the whole thing.
Yeah, right. A big part of it.
Thing was written, and I know you.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't this big like shock to me.
Sure.
But I think when we went and talked about the book after, was what's really great about the book, and I think the most important, the audience for it is read it when you're like your senior year of high school and you're in college. In fact, a kid yesterday.
Yeah.
He's still quite back. It's like you don't have to have it all figured out.
Right.
And there's so much pressure on these kids to figure it out and what am I going to do? And we see it all the time. So I think I didn't catch that part when you were writing it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that component of who the audience would be.
Yeah.
I think you can read it at any age.
Yeah.
But I think it will be that's the biggest takeaway. The most impactful group for that book, in my opinion,
adolescents
is that group that's trying to figure out what to do with their life and understanding and feeling like it's okay to not know what the hell you want to do with your life.
Right. And giving yourself the grace to pivot at different times, right? Just because you start down. In fact, I was just reading. I was reading a book from Lewis Holmes the greatest mindset. And he talked about how so many people start something, like let's say you get a degree, and so you start down that path, and then you realize that path's not for you, and you feel like you can't pivot because like, what will your family say? And they'll be like, oh, what a waste of time. You went to school for 4 years, you worked here for 3 years, you're just going to quit. And so you get stuck doing this thing. You talked about it a lot, like the passion and the burning desire. You've got to be willing to pivot in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to try and pull it up, but I just posted something on my Instagram story a couple of days ago. It's like at 30, at 40, there's all these different junctions of your life where you do pivot and you do change and you evolve. And I was talking to good friend of mine, Mike, and his wife, and they were talking about their marriage, and they have a beautiful marriage, but they're like, we've reintroduced ourselves many times. That was a big takeaway from the book. In fact, I called you and I read that part of the book.
Yeah.
You talking about that might have been probably one of the more shocking parts too, is just, reintroducing myself to my partner and my spouse.
Yeah. That's why I put it in the book, because I felt like this is something that needs to be talked about and shared.
And I don't remember seeing that in like the pre stuff. So when I read that in the book, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I was actually shocked that you put that in there, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Right. We're reinventing ourselves every day, and it's okay.
I remember talking to a bridal party in Vegas, and the wife or the bride was like, well, what's your advice? And I said, well, the best advice I can give you is the man you're going to marry next week will not be the same man 5 years from now, and neither will you. And as long as you two can grow together, then I think you can be together forever.
Yeah. Communicate and be honest. Be honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's where it starts.
Be honest with the people that are in your life. I mean, that is the most underrated thing. Just be that, right? Just, sit down, like just, talk. It's not always easy, but just with all the people in your life, with your clients, with your business partners, with your friends, your family, your kids, be willing to have really hard conversations and just be willing to accept that tomorrow you might have a shift in who you want to be. One of my brother's best friends, I've just seen him. He's stuck and he's too scared to pivot.
Yeah. It can be scary.
Right. So scared. So he's just stayed in this lane, this corporate toxic.
Is that the one who works in finance?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is,
if you watch this, my man, I'm not slighting you in any way. I love you deeply. I feel like
you want him to be his authentic self.
I just feel like I've watched you not being willing to just jump out of that, that I have to keep it all together.
It's hard, especially when you found
hard.
success and it's like, oh, I'm going to leave this success. And that's actually
terrifying.
That's a great segue to the last question of the podcast. But how do you define success?
I think for me, success is defined in my family being comfortable and being safe.
Yeah.
That's that safety for my kiddos, my wife, our extended family, right?
Yeah.
That to me, financial security for them, so they know that there's gonna be food on the table, the lights are gonna be turned on, right? I don't care the size of the house. That is how I define success. The cars are something that can go at any moment, right?
Yeah, right.
But having a grounded home space for my families to grow is that is the most important part of success to me.
It's amazing how as you progress in your life, how that becomes so clearly evident. I think most people probably share that same sentiment who are in that stage of their life where they have families. And it's like, that's not even, like, when I think back to my 19-year-old self working, I was never even thinking about that. Like,
right.
Because it wasn't even there yet.
That's why I said the silly thing. Like, the goal was that.
Yeah.
And so you're right. It shouldn't be silly in that way.
Yeah.
It was just the motivation for it needed to be thought
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing too, is that as in life, as you get new information, it would actually be foolish to not change what you believe. So if you think it's one thing and then someone presents you with information that makes it clearly evident it's not that one thing, it's the smart and intellectual thing to do would be to change what you believe based on a new set of information. So as we progress in life and we get new information, it's okay to pivot and change directions, because it'd be silly to just say, well, I already decided I'm going to go straight, so I have to go straight now, even though obviously if I turned left, I'd have a better life.
Yeah. And it's scary.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no, I get it. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, oh, it's easy to pivot in life.
Yeah. Just don't let fear be your guide.
Exactly.
Don't let fear stop you.
Try to not let fear guide your life. Right. And try your best. That's all we're doing is just bring your best every day. Right. I have a therapist for years. He's still my therapist, and he always talks about donuts. And he just says, look, you're going always bring your 10 donuts to whatever it is that you're doing, and you hope that the person on the other side of the table is going to bring their 10 donuts also. But when the person on the other side of the table keeps showing up with 3 donuts, and then you're trying to show up with 15 donuts to compensate or whatever that
17 donuts.
Yeah, to you do the math, I'm sure, whatever. It's that, right?
Yeah.
Just, don't overextend what you are to compensate for someone else. Meet people, right? Meet each other's energy, and then you can find some really, really great things and some beautiful things and beautiful moments.
I think that's great. That's a great way to kind of wrap it up. That being said, is there anything that you want to share before we end the episode, or any takeaways or nuggets you want to
I really
leave the
loved
audience
it. I've never. This is also my first. I guess I did one like kind of stand up one with Spencer, but this is cool. And I think the takeaway is I love it. I love talking about sharing these things.
Yeah.
Talking about really hard shit. Like talking about suicide. That's not an easy thing to talk about, and people don't want to talk about it.
Right. I was telling someone the other day, it was so unique that I've discovered through doing podcasts and being on podcasts is it's not very often that you sit down across from someone and talk for an hour.
I literally just thought about that.
Without your phone, without any distractions.
We should schedule times just to do that.
Yeah. No, it's a powerful thing because humans want connection. And I've realized that I have more and deeper, more valuable conversation during my podcast than any other time in my life, because it's the only time that I'm genuinely just focused on the person across from me.
Yeah. And kudos to you, because again, Cody's a freak. If he jumps into anything, he does it all the way, right? No matter what it is, he learns. I mean, when we hired him to start in tourism,
I didn't know anything.
He knew nothing, right? And now he's a total expert on it. And even this, I mean, how long have you been doing podcasts?
Well, I mean, I just started this year like saying I want to do it, and then I've just been guests, and then now I started this one. This is
now
episode
you're
7.
here, like flowing through it, and like it doesn't feel like we're chopping it up, or it feels like you've been doing this for 20 years, and so I'm really impressed with that, and then to see your growth, that's a huge takeaway for me. I've told a lot of people that, like, your growth as a human being and how you've changed, right? Like,
I've changed a lot in those 5 years, 6 years.
A lot, and so have I, right?
Yeah.
And people, and accepting that change, right? It's really cool. So bravo to this. I think it's really cool that you're seeing your passion for the book and what you're doing and wanting to do and thrive. It's really cool. Like, you get to speak at Utah Tech University.
Very excited about that.
And not having a college degree. Like,
right.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Right?
Yeah,
he sits on a board. Guys, this guy sits on a board at a university and does not have a college degree. I don't know if they know that or not, so you might have to edit that out.
It's funny. That may be a prerequisite.
Yeah, but they
then give me an honorary one.
They can,
that's the only way I'm going to get it.
That's the only way I'm going to go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. If anyone wants to connect with you, Breck Dockstader on Instagram, you can go to thevibrantteam.com. If you're interested in hospitality and you're motivated by Breck's message and you want to work with us, please reach out. Also, Cars for Kids, you can follow them on Instagram. If you want to be a part of that, reach out to Breck. He's an integral part of it. But just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Great. Love you, brother. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to doing it again.
All right, buddy. Love you.
Love you. See you.